It was looked forward to as a huge event, a big event, and a lot was expected of it. People wanted to hear what the Stones had to say.
The Rolling Stones hadn't played any live concerts almost 3 years. They hadn't played America for many years. They were fed up with Alan Klein, their nominal manager, who was also managing the Beatles, because they could never get any money out of Alan. So here they were, this world-famous band, virtually starving, and they had to do a tour of America. So they knew that if they did it with Alan Klein would end up with the lion's share of the receipts, and they'd do this huge tour and have no money. So they managed to seduce Alan Klein's nephew, Ronnie Schneider, away from his uncle's company, ABCO, to come and work for the Stones and do that tour.
They gave me sole rights to do the '69 tour, and they wanted me to run it. I had no money. They didn't have any money. So this was like, talk about things, like I said, you can't plan things in the way they happen. When I was trying to get them money, it was like still at limbo, and they wanted to come over to the States. And the agency, William Morris Agency, these two guys said, well, we had the tour with your uncle, we still want to do it. I redid the deal with them, figuring now I'd have an army. And I said, by the way, to do the tour, I need money. I need you guys, the William Morris Agency, to advance me money, which is like getting blood out of a stone. And so I got like 150 to start the tour. And that's how the 1969 tour became about. It was all getting the luck and circumstance and just the timing. God wanted it all to happen.
The Stones were amazing in 1969. I saw the Stones on that tour at the Los Angeles Forum. They proceeded to put on what was the greatest rock and roll show I had ever seen at that point in my life, and to this day, 50 years later, remains one of the greatest rock and roll shows I've ever seen. They were unbelievable.
Everybody was on fire. You know, you get the energy from a group, and you get an energy from the fans. I loved the fact that I could go and watch them every night, and it would be a little different each time, but it was great. The shows were spectacular. The boys knew how to perform.
You know, the Beatles had pulled back, Dylan had pulled back, but the Stones were out there in 1969, and coming to America in 1969 was no joke. You know, it felt like there might be a revolution in this country.
America in '69 is in a state of some turmoil. We've moved on from the Summer of Love in '67, obviously. Things have got a lot darker, partly because of the Vietnam War protests. We've had the assassination of Martin Luther King and Kennedy. So there's a much darker mood abroad. There's still that air of hippie optimism. You know, '69 is in some ways the high watermark of that, rather than the Summer of Love in '67, because this is the summer of Woodstock.
People often ask, how did the Grateful Dead and the Rolling Stones actually communicate with one another? How did that happen? How did they get together? And what happened was that the manager of one of the managers of the Grateful Dead was a guy called Rock Scully, lovely man, and he came to London. And Rock basically was a great proselytizer for the benefits of free concerts, how wonderful it was, what was going on in San Francisco. So it became a fantasy of the Grateful Dead when they next did a free concert, if the Rolling Stones were around, to actually get the Rolling Stones to play with the Grateful Dead. We played in Oakland and all the Grateful Dead people showed up at that show. That kind of ball that had been started in London about, wouldn't it be great if you guys played a free concert with the Grateful Dead, slowly kind of accelerated, and it became the case that somebody from the Rolling Stones had to go out to California and meet with the people from the Grateful Dead and get serious about whether this was possible. So I was chosen to go there.
Rock Scully's original plan was to get a permit for a concert by the Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead, and then 24 hours before the show announce we've got a special guest. It could have been fantastic. The Rolling Stones, right? You know, everybody assumed that they were looking at a mini Woodstock in San Francisco's Golden Gate Park. That's not what it turned out to be.
Hells Angels are fixtures at the Grateful Dead shows, and people start getting used to seeing them. And in fact, they can be quite helpful, sometimes reconnecting lost children with their parents. So it wasn't unusual to see them at some of these events.
The counterculture and the Hells Angels were sort of decent bedfellows because sex, drugs, rock and roll. Living the fast life, living life on the margins of society. On their bikes they expressed freedom going up and down the freeway. But I think there must have been a wariness because the Angels lived kind of a different life. They didn't subscribe to love and peace.
Rock told me we'd need the Angels, right, to guard the generators. There's no electricity there, so what you did was you had to hire in big generators to produce enough electricity to do the sound and lights and all that stuff. And I went to meet the Hells Angels, and the Hells Angels went to at some length to explain that they weren't cops. Basically, they were happy to sit by the generators and stop people messing with the generators, for sure, because they love music too, you know. The idea initially was that they would park their bikes in front of the stage. The beauty of that would be that no one would, you know, rush the stage or whatever. That was the theory.
They say, Ron, would you come out and negotiate a deal with Sears Point Raceway? So I flew out to San Francisco. I sat down with Dick St. John. And he basically said, well, your free concert, we need $100,000 to clean everything up. We need $100,000 to cover a $10 million cover insurance policy. Give me another reason why you need money. And then also we need any rights to a film. So I said, first of all, it's a free concert. We're not paying you $300,000. So that deal blew up.
The major problem was that the stage that had been perfect for Sears Point because it was going to be on the side of the hill was now at the bottom of a hill, and the stage was knee high. So it was effortlessly easy for people to get on it. The show was on a Saturday. I saw the place midday on Friday for the first time and was horrified. And there was already 100,000 odd people on site. And this stage was isolated in the middle of them, right? So we tried to make barricades of trucks and stuff around it and get set up for a show. And I knew on the Friday this was going to be a massive public order problem.
It was the end of the 60s. The Stones were finishing up a massive tour. The shows had been incredibly good. It was big news, and everyone was excited about it.
The sun came up, it was sort of a gray day, and then at some point they sort of officially let people in, and this mob of young people came rushing down the hill with the blankets and trying to grab themselves, you know, a tiny little space to sit. And the mood was definitely cheerful and fun and like, yes, this is going to be like Woodstock. This is groovy. I couldn't make it to Woodstock, but I'm here.
The problem was there was a lot of LSD, bad acid, bad drugs, lots of cheap booze. So by the time the show opened at midday on the Saturday, you had 300,000-400,000 people completely out of it. And the fights began, and it just degenerated from there.
This was scary. This was scary and sort of rationally scary. We weren't inventing it. We were seeing real ugliness and hurtfulness and savagery right in front of our eyes. The Hells Angels were horrible. And it seemed almost more so because over the past decade there had been a kind of a myth about how cool they were.
Really important to understand. The San Francisco chapter of the Hells Angels was located in the Haight-Ashbury. They were well known backstage at Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane concerts. They rode bikes with the road crews. They were an entirely different group of Hells Angels than, say, the home office over in Oakland. The problems with the Hells Angels at the eventual site of the concert at Altamont were all in front of the stage, and they were almost entirely caused by members of the San Jose chapter. The San Jose chapter was entirely different. That's an hour away from San Francisco. They're not hippies. They're not used to going to the Fillmore. They're not backstage presences. They are old-fashioned California thugs. And those were the guys in front of the stage with the pool cues.
In many ways, I felt essentially helpless. In the face of people who are determined to fight one another, what can a skinny little Englishman do? And as the day progressed and the violence got worse, I was faced with this dreadful realization that my band was going to come. The Rolling Stones were going to come and were going to have to appear here. Mick arrived and the rest of the Stones and got reports from people about how dreadful the whole thing was.
We were all put in a little trailer. So at the beginning, I'm sure we got stories that some violence, but we didn't see any of it and know what was going on. But you can sense it. There was, I don't know if it's in situations other places, but you can feel it in the air.
The Stones played out of their skin, and quite probably out of fear, because by this time, you know, the Hells Angels are all over the stage, and if they'd stopped playing, they might not even have got out alive.
Things just went from bad to worse, and there was no control in it. There was fights everywhere. People rushing the stage, being thrown off the stage, fights in front of the stage. We were more than aware of what was going on.
At that point, certainly, you know, bands like the Jefferson Airplane and the Rolling Stones, they were avatars, they were gods. And to see them desperate to try to stop this violence happening right in front of them and failing, you know, it's unforgettable.
You could see it etched in people's faces at the front of the stage, just looking at Jagger and say, please, you know, stop, you know, help us out. We're watching everything dying here. The brotherhood of man thing, which, you know, was the hippie dream, it was all coming really unstuck there very, very badly.
Finally, they're doing Under My Thumb, and a guy pulled out a gun, got 2 shots off, maybe 60 feet in front of the stage, and was stabbed to death by one of the Hells Angels. The band stopped.
All of a sudden I got told, run, we need the ambulance, the guy's been stabbed. So that's what I was told. So I started running to go to the side of the stage to get the ambulance. And as I'm running along there, I get to the end, and there's no driver. Typical situation. I'm screaming for the driver, and I'm running along there. Where's the driver to the ambulance to get him for them? And a cop says, wait, are you about that guy that got stabbed? I said, yeah. He says, you don't have to run, he's dead. And that was like that was it. That was so bad at the time, you know.
I ran into the audience down to where this had happened and helped carry the guy to the medical facilities. I've got blood all over me, his blood all over me. The guy was obviously inches from death. He was dying, no question about that. I ran back to the stage, I had a white sweater on with blood all over it, and said to Mick, whispered to Mick, a guy's being killed, man. You got to get off stage right now, right? He had a gun, you got to get off stage. To which Mick replied, and kudos to the man, you know, and I've always admired him for it. We can't get off stage. We can't leave. We have to finish the show. I managed to get him from the stage to waiting helicopter. We put 28 people in a helicopter for 12 people, and he took off with a grossly overweight helicopter. I mean, it's a miracle that we even made it. Flew back to San Francisco, and that was that, you know. And well, what happened? I collapsed. I've been working non-stop for like 5 days without any sleep. I collapsed in a chair, actually, in the hotel at a meeting we were having. The Rolling Stones had to leave. There were lawsuits were going to be flying everywhere, and they left on the first available flight for Europe. And I woke up the following day on the floor, actually. And I felt, I'd spoken to Mick briefly before he left, and I felt that a representative of the Rolling Stones should definitely be in California talking up upon behalf of the Rolling Stones, because I didn't feel like the Rolling Stones were actually responsible for any of what had occurred. And in fact, the concert was not the Rolling Stones free concert in San Francisco. It was the Grateful Dead's free concert in San Francisco, organised out of their offices, right, with the Rolling Stones and the other bands as guests.
I don't think the Stones realised the significance or the impact of Altamont until long after. I think most of us didn't. You know, this is the famous Chow En-lai thing when asked in about 1950 about the impact of the French Revolution on the subsequent course of history, and he said it was too early to say. So Altamont is a sort of rock and roll equivalent of that in a way. No one knew in December 69 or even by summer 1970 that it was going to go down in rock history as this seminal moment, this turning point, this tipping point